There's a moment when everyone around you suddenly sees who you actually are, and you can't take it back. You've spent years building a version of yourself that everyone believes in. Then one day, in front of the people who matter most, it crumbles, and you realize they were never seeing you at all. The person you pretend to be is dying. You can feel it happening, and the person underneath is terrified to be born. Everyone thinks they know you, but there's a version of you that no one's allowed to see. What happens when that version escapes? You built a perfect image. You maintained it flawlessly. Then someone said one thing, and the entire structure collapsed in seconds. The mask you wear is suffocating you, and you're only now realizing it was always a cage. For years, you've been two people, one for the world, one in the dark. Today, they collide, and nothing will ever be the same. There's a moment when you can't perform anymore, when the person everyone believes you are simply stops existing. It doesn't happen gradually. It happens in a single instant. Someone says something, or looks at you a certain way, or asks a question you can't answer with the usual lie, and the mask shatters. You're standing there exposed, and for the first time in years, you're actually visible. Carl Jung spent decades studying what happens to the human psyche when the constructed self collapses. He saw thousands of people reach this breaking point, and he discovered that this moment, this terrifying, devastating moment, is actually where real life begins. Because before this moment, you weren't living, you were performing. The mask you wear is called the persona. It's not dishonest exactly, it's a necessary social tool. You need different masks for different contexts, but somewhere along the way, most people make a fatal mistake. They forget there's a face underneath. They become so identified with the mask that they believe is who they actually are. They build an entire life around maintaining it. They make decisions based on it. They choose lovers, careers, friends, all to support the fiction of who they pretend to be. And then one day, the mask stops working. A man I know spent 30 years being the successful one, the driven one, the one who had it figured out. His entire identity was built on this. His relationships were built on it. His career was built on it. People knew him as someone who didn't need help, who always had the answers, who was invincible. Then he had a health crisis, nothing life-threatening, but enough to force him to slow down. And in that slowing, something shifted. He realized he'd never actually lived. He'd only performed the role of someone living. The mask of invincibility was the only thing people loved about him. But underneath, there was no one home. He'd sacrificed his actual self to maintain the image of a self that didn't exist. The day his mask stopped working was the day he realized he was a stranger to himself. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow becomes crucial. While you're performing the persona, everything that doesn't fit the image gets pushed into darkness. The ambition you said you didn't have, the fear you said you'd conquered, the selfishness you said you'd outgrown, the weakness you said was beneath you, all of it accumulates in the unconscious mind. It doesn't disappear. It grows, it waits, and it's been running your life the entire time without your knowledge. The moment the mask stops working is the moment the shadow steps forward. You're not actually surprised by what emerges. Deep down, you've always known. You've caught glimpses in moments of vulnerability. You've felt it in your body, the tightness in your chest when you smile and pretend everything's fine. The rage that builds when someone doesn't validate the image you've constructed. The desperation you feel when the performance feels like it might fail. But you've trained yourself not to see it. You've trained yourself to keep moving, keep smiling, keep performing. Because acknowledging the shadow would mean admitting that everything you've built is a lie. But when the mask stops working, you can't pretend anymore. A woman I know spent 20 years being the strong one, the independent one, the one who didn't need anyone. She built an entire identity around emotional self-sufficiency. Then she went through a breakup and discovered something that destroyed her carefully constructed image. She was desperately, achingly lonely. She wanted to call him constantly. She wanted reassurance. She wanted to know she mattered to someone. She discovered that her entire persona of independence was built on top of a shadow of neediness so profound it had no bottom. The day her mask stopped working was the day she realized the opposite of what she believed about herself was true. This is the nature of projection. You don't see the world clearly. You project your disowned shadow onto everything around you. You judge others harshly for the things you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. The person you despise for being needy, they're showing you your own disowned neediness. The colleague you resent for being ambitious, they're living out your own disowned ambition. The friend you criticize for being selfish, they're mirroring the selfishness you won't admit to. The day your mask stops working is the day you see this clearly. Because suddenly, you can't judge others with the same intensity. You can't attack them for being what you've disowned in yourself. You've met your own shadow, and you know what it looks like now. You can recognize it in the mirror, and once you've recognized it, you can't unknow it. The projection loses its power because you're no longer pretending the shadow belongs only to other people. Jung understood that this is the crisis point. You have two choices. You can either rebuild the mask, stronger this time, more defended, more committed to the fiction, or you can stop performing and start integrating. You can acknowledge what you've been denying. You can make peace with the parts of yourself you've been fighting. You can begin the process of individuation, becoming whole by accepting all of yourself, not just the parts you're willing to show. Most people rebuild the mess. They go through therapy and learn better coping mechanisms. They develop more sophisticated defenses. They construct a new narrative that explains why the old persona failed and positions them as someone who's learned and grown. But it's still a mask. It's still a performance. They're just better at it now. They've learned to hide more skillfully. The shadow is still there, still growing, still waiting for the moment when even the stronger mask fails. But some people do something different. They let the mask stay broken. They stop trying to fix the image. They start becoming honest about who they actually are. Not because it's easy, but because the alternative, continuing to perform, suddenly feels like death. The exhaustion of maintaining the fiction becomes unbearable. The gap between who they pretend to be and who they actually are becomes too wide to cross with lies anymore. This is individuation, not becoming perfect, not becoming the best version of yourself, but becoming the actual version of yourself, the whole version, the one that contains contradictions, the one that's capable of both strength and weakness, the one that wants things and also doesn't want them, the one that's ambitious and also content, the one that's selfish and also generous, all of it together. Jung saw that the self, the actual integrated whole, is bigger than the ego. The ego is what you think you are. The self is what you actually are. And the self can hold complexity that the ego can't tolerate. The self can be okay with being both capable and vulnerable. The self can accept being both strong and needing help. The self can live without the constant validation that the persona desperately seeks. The day your mask stops working is an invitation. It's the unconscious mind finally breaking through the denial. It's your actual self saying, stop pretending. I'm suffocating. I'm drowning in lies. I need to be seen. And most people hear this as a tragedy. They hear it as failure. They don't realize it's actually a liberation, because the moment you stop performing, you become free. Free from the exhaustion of maintaining an image, free from the terror of being exposed, free from the constant anxiety that someone will see through the mask, free from the need to control how people perceive you, free from using other people as mirrors to validate the fiction, free from judging others for the shadow qualities you won't acknowledge. But there's a cost. The people who loved you for the persona might not love the actual you. The life you built around the image might not work for the real person. The identity everyone knew might have to die. And that's terrifying. That's why most people don't do it. The day your mask stops working is the day you discover who you actually are when no one's watching. And that person might not be who you thought. That person might be smaller in some ways and larger in others. That person might be capable of things the persona would never allow. That person might want things the persona denied. That person might be flawed and real and infinitely more interesting than the perfect image ever was. The question is, are you brave enough to let that person exist?